Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of YouTube celebrity star Corey La Barrie. And the thing about this is, I want to talk about some things in his chart and transits to it that may have been tied in to him dying tragically. I mean, this is very devastating. It seems like there's some celebrities are just passing away left and right, sadly, in recent time. And looking at this, of course, I had to improvise once again. I didn't have his time of birth, so I had to do a solar sunrise chart where I put the sun at the same position as his ascendant. His birthday is May 10th, 1995. And born in Australia, puts the sun in Taurus, the moon in Virgo. I don't know his ascendant, of course, because I don't know his birth time. I want to say that my condolences, though, go out to his family and friends if they happen to see this video. And yes, people, I toned down that noise in the background that was exasperating people. And it was a ceiling fan that was very raucous, making a lot of noise. And I do apologize for it. So I hope that the complaints can be diminished a little bit as far as that goes, please. But anyway, looking at his chart, I mean, one of the things that stand out to me is that as far as the solar sunrise chart goes, it put the when it put the time of birth, which put the sun at the time of the ascendant, the time of birth where I put the sun at the same spot as his ascendant, Mars in Leo, very close to the fourth house cusp in the third house. And when you're talking about Mars in the third house, there can be a propensity toward accidents through driving. You have that very strong, Leo ferocity blending in. And now he wasn't the driver in this case, but maybe this was somebody whose driving was a little bit daring. Given that this was in Leo, a little bit risk taking. And you figure, I mean, you're always taking a risk, of course. If you're driving and you're under the influence, that's risk taking right there. Leo energy could be a little bit overly cocksure, a little bit overconfident. Now, again, he wasn't the driver, but the thing about it is you still have overconfident energy connected with this, no matter how you look at it. And it's close in the Mars in the chart was close to the fourth house cusp of the end or latter part of one's life. Now, the ruler of the third house, the moon, falls into the fourth house of the end or the latter part of life, and it was conjunct Chiron. And the thing about it is Chiron can sometimes manifest in physical wounds, not just emotional ones. So it's not surprising that there was something connected with this short journey with driving, local transportation, that was tied in, sadly, to his end or latter part of life. You're talking about Chiron being in Virgo. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some injury that was like maybe near his spleen. And another thing is Mars in his chart also squares his sun, so there may have been some injuries that might have been tied in, that might have been Taurus related or Leo related. Taurus sun can have physical issues that are connected with the neck and the throat. It wouldn't surprise me if he might have had some lacerations in that area. Another thing too is what I noticed in his chart. A thing about this too is that when I looked at the chart as far as transits go, now he had at the time transit Pluto was very close proximity to his natal Neptune, and that could be in some cases a death that somehow involves some kind of drugs or alcohol or intoxication. And the thing about it is, even though he may not have been under the influence, the driver was in this particular case. He also had transit Neptune close to his natal Saturn, and I wondered if he might have been feeling a little bit alone, a little bit desolate at this point in time, and that could also be an indicator to dissolving or dissipation of one's career. And you're talking about Pisces being something in filmography. So anyway, another thing, looking at his chart as well, he appeared to have what would be called a mutable grand cross, which involved Mercury in Gemini, and he had Saturn in Pisces, and then he had in the moon in Virgo, and I believe Jupiter in Sagittarius. So when you're talking about a grand cross in astrology, I mean, it's been referred to as one with a cross to bear and a lot of tribulation. And the thing about it is, when you're talking about, I mean, mutable energy, that could give a tremendous and exorbitant amount of anxiety, stress, worry. Yes, see, I know he has the Sun in Taurus, so he has a lot of that worry-free energy. Sun in Taurus, the basic character, can be very calm, placid, very cool, and can even be downright unflappable. And again, I don't have the birth time, so I don't know what his ascendant is. But you're talking about a grand cross, still can bring about a lot of tribulation in that. And again, that cross to bear, what it tells me is, though, even though he did attain, I'm sure, a lot of recognition and notoriety and exposure for what he did. He was a very popular YouTube celebrity. I'm not sure what his videos consisted of, because I honestly did not really research really that much in terms of what he actually did. But what it tells me with that grand cross is that he probably had a little bit more trouble than he actually was going to acknowledge, and there was more stress involved in this, and in certain dilemmas he may have had to deal with. Remember, Saturn is one of the planets in that grand cross, and Saturn in Pisces can sometimes indicate a career that could be tied in with your with some kind of filmography. And the thing about this is too, and you're looking at, I mean, Mercury and Gemini being involved, it could have been involved a lot of gossiping, or things that might have been tied in, not necessarily by him, but I mean directed him, that might have been maybe prevarication or distorting the truth a little bit. You have Jupiter in Sagittarius in opposition to the Mercury in Gemini, so that's an indicator where things, where communications may have been a little bit distorted, a little bit enlarged, and inflamed. But on the good side, he did have Mercury in its dignity in Gemini, and Jupiter in its dignity in Sagittarius. Now, Jupiter in Sagittarius in the 7th house in the solar sunrise chart. Remember that Jupiter can have a propensity to enlarge. It's not just, I mean, it's very benign and benevolent, but as I've expressed in previous videos, it could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand, and it may have expanded and enlarged a lot of very maybe foolhardy, maybe open adversaries, or ones that were overly self-righteous and very opinionated and believed what they wanted to believe about him, and ones that might have been very, very reckless. Maybe they were people that were exceptionally religious. I don't really know exactly, and I haven't really studied up on him too much, but these are people. I mean, so it tells me that there was an awful, and also Moon in Virgo. I think they could also be about public criticism, and the Moon could show the area where you could be very sensitive to. I believe. I mean, Moon in Virgo tells me that, I mean, you can, on a subconscious level, you can be somebody that's very punctilious with details and very critical, but it could also, I would think, could be about sensitivity to the issues connected with the sign, and maybe where he may have been more sensitive to people that were overly judgmental and critical, more so than most. But that, I'm saying that is a theory I have as far as the Moon sign goes. So the thing about it is, and just looking at, I mean, his chart, it's just a shame that, I mean, such a young age, and 25 years old, to die to be involved in a situation he really wasn't his fault. Some may say, well, he did make the decision to go into the vehicle. That's fine and everything, and he may have been cognizant of the fact that that driver was under the influence, but how could he have even predicted what was going to go down with him. And really, it's and I noticed too, he also had Pluto and Scorpio at a critical at 29 degrees, and Pluto, of course, can be tied in to a death, and sadly, that remember that Scorpio is the sign connected with murder. Now, this was not a and retrograde energy. Remember, I believe it was retrograde, if I'm not mistaken, is Pluto and Scorpio at 29 degrees. The thing about it is, when you're talking about something that's retrograde, it could be indirect. So in this case, it's apparent to me that the person driving the vehicle did not maliciously or intend to murder Corey La Barrie, but the thing about it is indirectly responsible for this by being under the influence at the time that this did transpire. And another thing I noticed about his chart, he had Uranus, I believe, conjunct his Neptune. And when you have like a conjunction like that, it tells me that that could give a very unusual, unique ability for something in filmography, and being in Capricorn, and something that was going to give him some kind of status and recognition and play a role in improving perhaps his stature in life, and gaining notoriety. So it's just a shame when somebody that young and has received so much acclaim and accolades and recognition, and just really, I mean, his whole life, a good part of his life ahead of him, had to die so tragically, so suddenly, that this happened. And it's sad that this happened like right on his birthday. Sadly, the sun was shining on him, but not really, sadly, in a positive way. He was thrust into the spotlight, but it was done sadly in a very really in a very adverse manner. So sad but true that there was going to be a spotlight shown on his life, but sadly, this was the end of his life, tragically. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.